Shalom. I'm recording this from my home, as you might have noticed, and the reason why is because we're in this year of lockdown in our homes. And over the last year, I've had the chance to look at places in the home and to reflect on what it means to be at home figuratively, in the sense of feeling good, uh, and physically, what is the home and its boundaries. And I'm taking some time to explore through the Jewish lens, which is what I like to do, uh, sacred spaces within the home. And what I mean by sacred spaces are places which have potential for a spiritual encounter. Okay, I'm not sure if we'll be able to define that over these four shiurim. Maybe yes, maybe no. Um, but I want to suggest that the places which have that potential for spiritual encounter are the places which have also potential for things to go wrong. Okay, and this place of huge potential um, is marked instinctively through ritual. And rituals mark that place as a place of, again, danger and positive potential. So those are the sacred spaces that I want to look at. And I want to start by looking at the door of the house, the doorway, um, is a place which I identify as a sacred space. Uh, it's a sacred space, again, we can think in those terms of potential for danger, right? If you open the door, that's the outside world. That's a scary place. It's a place of violence. It's a place of sickness. It's a place of the unknown. And closing the door is having a sense of security, right? So that's the danger out there. Um, and it's marked by ritual, and we'll look at that in a minute. Uh, I think the reference to the door, the earliest reference to the door, is in the book of Genesis, where Cain, the son of Adam, who he's just been in a way, or he experiences himself as being having been rejected by God, and he feels this huge jealousy towards his brother Abel. And just one moment before the terrible thing happens with his brother, where he goes out and kills him, uh, God comes into the story and names what's happening there. And there's a very cryptic verse, but it says something like, uh, Cain, why are you distressed? Why is your face fallen? Surely, if you do right, there's uplift. But if you do not do right, sin is crouching at the door. Its urge is towards you, yet you can be its master. There's at the door of yourself, at the door of this moment, there's sin. There's the potential for violence. And that is trying to get into you. Right? There's a door that's separating where you are now from what you're about to do. And that potential for violence, let's call it sin. And God is saying you can be its master. You don't have to. You don't have to go into what the next step might be. Okay, and the door there is a metaphor for the boundary between the self at the moment and all the potential futures. Right? And there is potential for violence out there, and you still have the choice. You're the master of the door. The door is a scary place. You'll have to open it at some point, but you're the master of the door. Now, in terms of rituals around it, one of the famous ones is the mezuzah. Uh, won't go into too much, except to say that there's lots of discussions about what is the mezuzah, that that scroll which is attached to the door. And there's lots of traditions which, for example, Rambam speaks against those traditions, but that's just a proof that they're actually happening. Uh, uh, there's traditions of writing different names of God, different magic names of God in different codes, writing the name of God and backwards, or this other code where you write Kuzu instead of the four-letter name of God, or writing names of angels. All sorts of things are put onto that mezuzah. Why? Because there's an instinct that the mezuzah is a protective force. Okay? And again, whether that's right or wrong, the fact is that that's done. And the fact is that that's an instinct that responds to the reality of the door being a dangerous place. Now, there's another ritual that happens at the door, and it's connected to the mezuzah in a way, right? And that's the Chanukiah lamp. It's done only once a year. It's not like the mezuzah, but the place to put the Chanukiah is at the door, on the outside of the door, 1 hand breadth away. 1 hand breadth away from the door. So it's on the outside, but it marks the door as a door. It marks the door as the sacred place. Okay, and there's a discussion about which side of the doorway you put it on. And the conclusion in the Talmud is it should be opposite the mezuzah. Right? So you have the mezuzah on the right side and the Chanukiah on the left side, and you're surrounded by these markers, which are not just markers of their identity towards the outside world, but also markers of the door as a door, as a place which deserves its own sacred rituals. Now, you might have experienced the Chanukiah in different places, not at the doorway, especially if you don't live in Israel. And that's already mentioned in the Talmud. Right? The Talmud says the mitzvah is to place the Chanukiah at the entrance to the house on the outside. But if someone lives upstairs and doesn't have an entrance to the outside, one places it at the window, adjacent to the public domain, where people can see it from the outside. And in times of danger, one places it on the table in the inside, and that is sufficient, right? The mitzvah, the best place to put it, is a place which is the most dangerous place. And the worst place to put it is a place which doesn't interact with that danger. And again, marking that danger with a ritual is also a way of saying, yes, this is a place with lots of potential for all sorts of actions, a place for all sorts of possibilities, and I acknowledge them. I acknowledge this is a special place. I'll finish off with a story, maybe an introduction to the story by Rabbi Nachman, a story that was told in 1809, a year before his death, on Chanukah. Okay, and although it doesn't directly relate to Chanukah, I think there's all sorts of clues, especially in the introduction, that talk about the doorway where the Chanukiah is. The doorway is a place of danger, and the doorway is a place of wonderful potential, because what happens at the door? Guests come in. Okay, and that's the potential, the wonderful potential of the doorway. So I'll just read the beginning of the story. A guest walked into the house and asked the owner, "How do you make a living?" Okay, we don't have no other context. Just someone walks into the house and says, "How do you make a living?" He started to explain that he has no fixed income, but only drew from things in the world. He asked, "What are you learning?" And the owner answered, and they started to talk together until they reached a conversation of words that flow from the heart. Right? Somehow this guest comes in, and everything opens up. Through those two questions, the owner of the house uh, opens up his heart. The owner of the home started to yearn and long to reach something of intense holiness. The guest said, I can learn that with you. The guest read his thoughts. The owner was shocked and started to think maybe this person is not human at all. But he looked again and saw that he was speaking normally. He suddenly wished to believe in him and started addressing him as Rabbi. This is where it gets very weird. And said, starts addressing him like a rabbi. First of all, I wish to learn how to treat thee with the correct honor. And it is not that I wish to dishonor thee, no, God forbid, but yet nonetheless, it is hard for a mere mortal to pay attention continually and fully. Therefore, I wish to learn how to properly honor thee. The guest responded, I have no time at the moment. He doesn't like this conversation. I have no time at the moment. I'll come back another time and teach you. Now I need to leave this place. He cried, this too I need to learn from thee. What is the law? How do I correctly accompany thee out of the house? The guest said, until just after the doorway. He started to think, how can I actually go out with him? Now I'm with other people, but once we are alone outside, who knows who he is? And he said, I'm scared to go with you. And they walked through the doorway. And I'll stop the story there, although it's a wonderful, wonderful story. But I love this story especially because it marks out the doorway as the place of potential. And all of those potentials, the potential for a guest to come in to open up the heart. On the other hand, who knows who these guests are? Inviting someone into your house, terrible things can happen by just opening the door, by just putting the mezuzah outside the door, by just putting the Chanukiah out the door, by just opening up yourself to others. Yet that's the only way to live your life. And marking that tension is what makes this a sacred place. And there's more to say about that, but for now, we'll stop there.